and Davy, who worked on the forward, will do a shorter presentation because first of all I'm hungry, and secondly we have a workshop this afternoon, but for those who are not participating, at least you get an idea how much fun we had.
I'll keep it short to be short, because I know a lot of people will be thinking about food. There's this great English word, hangry, a new word which combines angry and hunger. And I don't want to get lynched by an hungry mob, so let's keep it short. I'm here to introduce the Forward project, which you've probably heard a lot about already, and which will be shown to you in a demo in workshop 2 after lunch, so please join us. Now, as an introduction, what exactly is Forward? For us, it was a framework for EU-wide audiovisual orphan works registry, which basically means that we needed to find an automated system, or automate it as much as possible, to assess the rights status for all types of audiovisual works. And the system would be to search, harvest, and process the information necessary to give the user a clear indication whether a work, an audiovisual work, is orphan in public domain or in copyright. There were 13 partners. Some of the most illustrious audiovisual archives in Europe participated. I don't think they mind me telling you that they're illustrious. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but you'll receive the presentations as well, I think, so you'll be able to find all of them afterwards. But I wanted to talk to you about why we wanted to have this framework, why we wanted to create this platform to be able to determine the copyright status and the orphan status of audiovisual works. Firstly, the current competitive disadvantage for film heritage institutions. The assessment of rights status of audiovisual works is critical for their reuse in commercial, educational, and cultural contexts. Yet we do not have a framework that, helped in that way. I think somebody's already hungry. So the second thing is that right clearance, like the previous presenter also said, is that it's a very complex and a time-consuming process, and we simply do not have the resources in identifying and locating, or enough resources. Maybe that could be another thing that we tell our European friends, in locating rights holders, and our resources are very limited in that way, and we need a lot of time to clear these rights. And thirdly, the audiovisual ecosystem that we had, or still have, is simply not ready for rights clearance in the digital world. I think we need to be really honest about that. For instance, there is a lack of structured and reliable EU-wide information sources. There have been, of course, several steps that have been taken, as you've seen today. But still, we need a lot of work that still needs to be done. Which is why the project also is called Forward. It's a way to go forward. For instance, Finland, and I hope I'm not saying anything wrong here, does not determine the main contributors for rights holders of a film. Every contributor to a film can be a rights holder there, which is an enormous extra burden on the work that you have to do, of course, to determine whether a work is in copyright or orphan. Yet the demand, and that's not surprising, is growing and growing every year, and is becoming very, very large. There are large digitization projects that revolve, and every archive, every institution in Europe has been doing the last couple of years, is by digitizing and making works accessible for education, research, cultural purposes. Yet we simply cannot give access to those digitized works yet. So there is a large demand. We have done a lot of digitization. Now we need a way to give people access to their own history. Production of new programs and new apps, new TV shows that are reusing audiovisual works is increasing. If you're from Belgium, you've been bombarded by television shows about the First World War, and will be for the next couple of years until 2018, I think. So all of those programs reuse old film clips, old information. And then lastly, there are a lot of new and innovative business models that are based on new distribution channels, and we need a better way to determine copyright and orphan status, to be able to go with the flow, to be able to provide people with access the way they want to. We are 2016, almost 2017. Like Nicola said, we're no longer the 60s, although some of us might might find that a bad thing. But we're thinking that we should look forward to where we are and where we're going. So, what were the objectives of Forward? Looking back at this is why we wanted this project, but what were the objectives? First was a clarification and harmonization of the legal framework for the rights clearance process. That means that an analysis of existing information resources, databases, repositories, catalogs, etc., that can be used to define the rights status of an AV work had to be done. There was a need for harmonization of the rights status definitions across Europe. As you can imagine, not everybody considered, if I say in copyright, it might not be the same thing in every country, or there is a different rules for every one of those. And that meant also that Forward had to implement 11 different, because we have 11 national sources, 11 different legal systems in opposition to Arrow, for instance, which they might not have always had that, but have now a very clear legal structure for rights clearance. Forward simply didn't have that, and all these countries have very great differences. As you can see here, this is what we call decision tree for one country. I'm not going to go into it, but this is just for one country. We needed to, and just one part for one country also. So we needed to find out for every country how you can actually determine the copyright, how you can actually determine the orphan, and then get that into one big technological system that actually works, and one big digital framework that would work for the determination of the orphan status and the copyright status. Secondly, we wanted to design and implement a technical platform that would perform this data harvesting and data processing easily. Right now, when you have to do the copyright assessment in FHIs, that's a lot of work that you need to go through, because it's not one clear platform that you can use to do that. We wanted to have a platform that would allow for all this, where all the metadata that we do have in our different databases often would be centralized and could be reused. That means, of course, simplification of the process for us, which is an enormous help towards using our resources, which are very limited. And it also means avoiding errors as much as possible during processing. Since we're all human, and humans tend to make mistakes. Yes, we're all human, I can't stop. We tend to make mistakes anyway. We need to have a system that avoids those errors as much as possible. Secondly, a third objective was the creation of a permanent registry of audiovisual orphan works. Luckily, the Belgian law has as you have seen just in a moment for us, luckily they made it mandatory as well. And we are also logging every step that has been taken in the diligence search performed within the system. So if there's anybody that ever has a question on that, we can trace these steps that have been taken. And that helps us enormously in providing the work that has been done and showing them how we got to the copyright status and the orphan status. And lastly, what we did was, of course, we had this directive, the famous directive, and we wanted to support our FHIs to implement this directive on orphan works. And our results, or information on orphan works, is directly transported through to UIPO, which is a direct link between the framework we've built and the database you just saw very briefly. This all would help us to establish a network of 10 national clearance centers across Europe, of course based on the implementation of these national decision trees. It would ensure the interoperability of the Forward system with others, like Arrow, which was a very important one. And it would be a very big, well, it's very useful as well to have a sustainable model. So we strive for a very sustainable business model connected to this, to Forward as a system. Now, I'm running through this very quickly, but I don't think anybody really minds. What it comes down to is what our conceptual architecture is, and I do invite you to the workshop because it can show you a lot more what it actually is, the system, is that we have two macro components, right? This is the rights information infrastructure, which helps us to determine the copyright status and the orphan status. And we have a registry of orphan works, which means that we log the orphan works that we find, but we also log the work that we do within the system. And then we send those orphans and that information to the UIPO database. And that came down to 3 layers: the presentation interface, which is just basically the website that people can easily use, the business logic that's behind the entire determination process, and of course the communication interface with others and external partners, which I'm not going to go into this, but it looks a little bit like this, very general level. And of course that's been built into basically what is a website where you can, for your country, or where the FHI for their country, can find films, go through what we call what everybody calls a diligence search, which first determines the copyright status of the work, and then goes on to determine the orphan status of the work, as well, based on the information that came out of the databases, but also based on information that came out of external databases, like the VIAF database on agents that are important for film works, etc. So what it comes down to is we build this platform. We're almost done with it. We've built this platform that FHIs can use and that will guide them through this entire process, that will make it easier for them to determine the copyright status, determine the orphan works, and hopefully that can also help the FHIs in finding these orphan works that are often hidden there, and open them up to the public, because it is their history. We're not doing it like Nicolas said before. We're not doing this simply because we want to do it or we like digital stuff. We're actually doing this to find a way to show or to give Europeans access to their own cultural heritage, as I imagine all of you are doing in your own institutions as well. That's about it, what I really can tell you. It's a very short introduction, as I promised, so we can all go to lunch now. We need questions, of course.
Now there are the questions and answers. Don't try to escape. Thank you, Davy.
I'd like to ask Frédéric from Royal Library. Quick question. What is the cutoff date for your newspapers for making them available? The year that, the age of newspapers that you allow yourself to put online.
So we are putting online collection from 1830 till the end of the Second World War, so 1918. And First World War, yeah. And we are proposing online in situ on special terminals and so on, and the rest of the collections, which have been digitized up to 1950. What is 100 years? We take 100 years. Yes, this is. It was just to be coherent on a scientific or historical point of view, just to go to the end of the Second World War and to the war press. And of course, if some problem is identified, we have the opportunity to put it out. But and this is not foreseen to change this balance here every year. So up to now, we remain to the end of the First World War.
Just
a practical question. So when we can expect some results from Forward to EU IPO, and what would be the method that you're going to work? Will you send that on demand, or will there be some big first bunch of data, what is your forecast?
First of all, the project comes to an end basically after Christmas. We are in validation phase. As all validation phase, I understand there are some bugs. Otherwise, what's the point of validating if you don't find bugs? For what the upload is concerned, I think it very much depends on institutions. I know that you got a big bunch of files of information from Amsterdam, and there is a big bunch from Brussels waiting, because we are waiting for a framework in which we can actually declare orphans, and then you get a big bunch, and then I expect the situation will be with others similar. I think anyway it depends on the partners, also because the system is designed to do the upload depending on national regulation. So, for example, we are working even for Italy with this nonsense, talking about nonsense application of the 90 days waiting period before on a website. I mean, this kind of thing should be built into the system.
I have a question from Gita. Do you monitor the status claim changes? Are there many, and if so, are they rejected or accepted by the beneficiaries? Is there kind of evaluation of this?
We have statistical data, so we can access it. Because normally claims go to beneficial organizations, so normally we are not notified when somebody claims. But sometimes we log into the system just to see what is happening. And we are aware. I can't tell you now the exact number. I could check it during the break. But we are aware that there were some claims and some negotiation procedures are ongoing. So those records were put on hold by beneficial organizations. So yes, when there is some big set of data, especially, there are some claims, but really on very small scale, just few.
Questions about forward. What do you mean that the results are going to be sent to UIPO? You mean that beneficiaries send to forward the information, then you do that to UIPO, or we have to do it twice? And then second question, what do you mean with business models that can be the end of our orphan work search, VOP, streaming? If when you talk about these two ministries, they say no, it's just for making available, so online for free, for cultural reasons?
So the two questions. First of all, if you process a film within forward, at the end you have a result. The system, if you want, can send this result to Alicante or to your ministries, or both. That's depending on how it works in your country. At that point, this is automatic. I mean, this can be automatized if you want to. Otherwise, it sends the result to you, and then you do what you want with it. Forward is not in the beginning, because Forward was designed before the directive. So at the time, it was a question to create a registry that was for all orphan works. Then the directive came, and the database in Alicante came, so we had one less problem to deal with, except that we produce a database anyway because we want to remember, so we don't search twice for the same film or the same filmmaker or whatever. Also, to clarify the latest remark, at the moment the system is designed that does not automatically declare orphans, because we do not believe humans can prove the absence of God. So we cannot prove the absolute absence of an author, because theoretically there is no end to the diligent search. I can now walk the streets of Brussels shouting the name of somebody in order to find him. This can be a diligent search. So at one point we have to decide, okay, that's enough. We searched through all the mandatory sources, we checked the red page, the yellow pages, we did everything. Now this thing is orphan. And this is there's somebody responsible in the institution to press the big red button. So that's what Gabriella referred to. Once the thing is declared orphan, the film is orphan, the transfer to UIPO is an administrative task. But the moment I say yes, that's an orphan. This is also important to understand. All we're talking about in administrative is the legal moment when the orphan is when I press the red button. I as director or you as responsible. The business models at the moment, of course, we know that we cannot use but for example, like in the case of Arrow, by the way, if there is a major digitization project in one country, nothing goes against that. This is done through the system, and the system, the research of orphans is paid for. Why not? Because, and then there is also another problem that as we just described, the research must happen in the country. So in a way, when we build a system and we work together as institutions, when I have an Italian film in my collection, I have to go through your system and vice versa. And if we have co-production, we do it twice, or 3, or 4, or 5. And if the co-production is directed by Gallone, working in the UK, I have another 2, which makes 6. So maybe somebody will pay for that. Any other questions? Do you have questions? Vragen? As when I declare an orphan, I here declare lunch.